It's Off Exit 10, presented by Capital District Sport and Fitness.
Hello, 1, 2, 3. Check.
Perfect.
And now you need to drop a bar.
Paul, you're good right here.
Paul Wall.
Legend. We love Paul Wall here. We love Paul Wall.
Are you a rap guy?
I had times in my past. I go through phases of music, and rap comes in, but it's not the most prevalent.
Okay.
People were calling me Paul Wall, like they thought that was my name for a while. Powell.
Okay.
Paul Wall.
We just call you
They
Paul
call me
Wall.
Paul Wall.
Paul Wall's great.
Yeah, Paul Wall's the man. I'm a big Paul Wall fan.
On the white rapper list, there's like Eminem and there's Paul Wall. It's I don't know how much
else we
deeper it gets
missing?
than that. That are like great rappers.
Not a lot.
I can't think of one.
Mac Miller.
Oh, Mac
yeah.
Miller.
Mac Miller.
Okay, yes.
I was like,
Miller
there's
on
one
there.
on one that was at the tip of my brain that I couldn't think of, so Jordy filled in the blank for
Gotcha.
me.
Was that it, Paul?
Yes, that was the one I was thinking of.
What's your music now? Like, what's your vibe that you're into?
It's everything. But rock. I guess rock. I got into a Fish phase.
Fish,
know about
Fish
Fish?
is very popular around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never listened a bunch or been into him. Jordan, is Powell good mic-wise? Distance, I still apologize.
No, yeah,
We're
you
good.
look good.
Good.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll make any adjustments on the board that
Okay.
I need to.
I just didn't want him to start drifting backwards, so I moved it a little closer to him.
Fish
So
is
we should
like
be good.
Fish is like jam band, right?
It is, which I was never into. Didn't like when people were not putting words out. And but what is impressive about jam bands is something I really enjoy and I relate to in sport. Is that there's an element of when you go out, you shouldn't be thinking. You should just be performing and very much in the moment. And so much of what concert artists, what they do is they have a set thing they do every time when they come out. It's very rehearsed. It's just always automatic. But jam bands, and when they're good, there's no set, like, and they're just way in the moment, and then like they're truly creating music. And so that makes it very impressive when they do that live.
That's being in a flow state.
It is flow. Yeah.
That's so important in athletics, being able to get into this flow state and perform there. Mm-hmm. It's what everybody's trying to do, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, it's the new, not new anymore.
Is it a trendy word to use?
Very. Very. I feel like 5 or 10 years ago, it wasn't talked about so much. People say in the moment, in the zone, and okay, that's how we talked about it. But then all the research was coming out, and it became very, very trendy, and social media picked it up. So now when I'm talking to teenagers, they know that word, and they use that word, so it's trendy.
What are you doing to actively help somebody be able to get there when they're playing their sport?
Yeah, there's two things I'm usually going for, and first, it's an insane amount of prep. You have to be prepared, and you have to be able to take the skills that you need to perform and do them automatically without thinking. And to do that, you need to have reps your skill. But there also needs to be a letting go process that happens where you are not trying to force an outcome, and you can just know and trust that you have the skill, and you just do the skill. And so there's this process of, okay, rep it, plan it, think it, know what I want to do. And then as soon as we get to the performance, it's let go and just do.
That has to be so hard for people. It was hard
Very
for me.
much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you're so focused on the mechanics of doing your skills or how a play should run. And then, to flip your brain off in a game and be like, let me just be.
It's a skill it takes intention. And for a lot of reasons, whether it be, we're taught to know the process mechanics of a hitter in baseball. It's like, okay, I want my elbow here. I want to make sure I'm like eye on the ball and swing through and like turn my wrist, like whatever it is that they're focused on. And they put so much attention into that they forget to stop thinking. And then that's not even including the anxiety or pressure of situations that make them want to overthink it.
Right.
Because they're like, all right, this means a lot. I want to keep thinking about it so I don't mess it up. And that takes them out. It creates pressure, puts them in their head. So it becomes, you need a skill to then bring you into the moment. And that's a lot of what I do with athletes, is figure out what are those different things we can do.
Yeah, how'd you first get into psychology and sports psychology and where you're at now with your business?
It was a long process, a little bit by accident, because I think that I fell into the world of psychology. It was my undergrad in college, and for no other reason than I found people very interesting. And when I was talking to counselors back in the day,
It's a goddamn tsunami out there.
This is the hardest rain we've ever had during a pod. I don't know how much our post-production will filter it out. You may hear it, you may not, and you're going to think we're crazy.
I just hope everybody's windows are closed.
I did think about that.
Jordy, windows?
I think so.
I see Jordy like looking out there like,
Yeah, it's really
it's not
raining.
100%, but I'm not going to go check. So here we are.
we're committed.
Let's hope for the best. But okay, your undergrad was psychology.
It was, and not because I thought I'd have some big career. I have no idea what I would do in it, but I was fascinated with observing people and why people did what they did. It was always a thought of mine, and someone was like, "Oh, well, psychology is what those people do. That's what people do that are into that." And so I was told to go to do that major, and I loved it. I loved it at that time. But even after, I still had no idea what I wanted to do. I went through a weird track of jobs where right out of school I was working with kids with autism, and that was great. I was pretty good at it, but there was a personal connection piece clearly, which is the struggle of kids with autism is the social connection and relationships sometimes, and so then I moved on to work at a recreational therapist for a jail in Baltimore for youth that were jailed for difficulties they had, and I was the recreational therapist for them, and found out then that I really could develop really good relationships with kids that had challenges.
Dude, I feel like that's such an important piece in our country for kids, that a lot of these kids probably didn't have great family lives or great role models, I would assume.
Many do not.
Yeah.
Many do not. And any kid that was there, there were situations in their home life that were not good for a variety of reasons.
Right.
And so the relationships were good, and I enjoyed it. I'm good with kids. And then that took me on a path after that where I got a job as a behaviorist at a high school for it was in a special ed department, but working with kids with emotional disorders and keeping them in classrooms, making sure that they weren't yelling at teachers and getting kicked out of rooms, and I was like the kind of the chill guy walking around and helping kids when they'd get upset, and it was a very valuable time because I certainly realized I had a skill of doing that, of talking with kids and being with people and helping them with the ability to manage their emotions. I kind of learned that I was pretty good at that at that school, and a ton of professional development that I received on how the mind works, how the body works, how stress and trauma impacts our ability to perform, but just in a school setting, and that really was the precursor to, oh, I should go do a career in this, and that is when I got figured I should go get my master's in counseling to be a therapist. So all of that was kind of the pre-education and pre-work.
Do you feel like working with all of those different populations just kind of helped give you a good foundation for working with kids today?
Absolutely. I feel like I've been with everything in a variety of it.
Yeah. And then because you were working at a school before you started your own business, correct?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
When did you make the switch to say, okay, I'm gonna go on my own here?
Yes. So we're local to the capital region in Albany, and I worked at a school called the Albany Academies. I was there for 6 years. It was a private school, and they're separate boys and girls, and I was just with the boys side. And so 6 years there, and I did like it. I liked the community a lot, and working in the education system is great. You get so many benefits of time off, and so there's these bonuses about being in schools, but there were a few things I was missing, and for these reasons I switched to the business. I wanted more freedom of time, where I could choose my schedule and when I was working and when I didn't want to. I have 2 kids, so the ability to take to appointments or see the things that they're into. I wanted freedom of time. I wanted freedom of money. With any 9-to-5 job, there's usually a cap on the money you can make. And so I wanted freedom to make as much money as I wanted to. And then the last is freedom of impact, where I'm at a school with a couple hundred kids, and that's the only impact I can make. It's just on those couple hundred, which of course is great, but the ability to meet with hundreds and thousands, and I hope the impact goes into millions. That was really this enticing part around the business, is time, money, impact.
Yeah, and just to scale your skills and your knowledge and what you offer. Your field's so interesting. We talked when we first met in here, but like Paul, if a parent wants their kid to be better at their sport, I feel like they have no problem spending money on physical things, strength and conditioning. Oh, they hurt their knee. Okay, we're going to do physical therapy, like without batting an eye. And I feel like there's still this little bit of resistance. I don't know what the right word is, being reluctant, unsure about sending your kid to a sports psychologist, to a psychologist, where the mental game, it's just as important, if not more, than all of these physical things.
Well, I think it's kind of ass backwards. Like, that should be the first thing you're doing.
Yes, of
Like,
course.
they take the, you know, we talk about it in here where people will take like the pyramid of like training or pyramid of nutrition with like supplements or whatever it is.
You're saying
and
like
they
what
flip,
you have,
and they flip it upside down.
where the supplements become the base.
The supplements become the thing that they're more worried about, rather than like, okay, well, what's your nutrition? What's your sleep? What's your like stress? What's all of that? And then you slowly work into the supplement side of things. And with like kids and sports performance, if you focused on the mental side of things first and then went into the physical, they'd probably do a lot better in the physical side of things.
Yeah, that's like in here we think like if we had our pyramid for the gym, it's like the foundation would be quality movement, and then you have strength, and then you have power, and then you have speed. But like the foundation should be your brain.
Yeah.
Should be your brain. Have you found that getting into private practice, like some hesitancy or reluctance?
I think so. It is, you know, it's new for one, and so people are always kind of reaching out and kind of trying to get an understanding of what I do, which because they're not used to it.
And how have you known how to? And we'll come back to the reluctancy part. But how did you know how to even set up your business model? Because there's a lot of for-profit strength and conditioning facilities that it's pretty easy to model after. They're successful. We can model after that. But I feel like there's not many people that do what you do.
I mean, you nailed a big challenge
Yeah.
that I had in my business
Yeah.
of figuring out what is the model that works. What do I charge that makes sense for the market? And it was a tough transition. But I find that when you're offering something that is helpful to people and it's working, then word gets out and it spreads. And I've had some really great clients that have referred people to me, and so it's been helpful. But I've had all those years as a therapist of working with people with mental health. I understood the relationship of, okay, someone's coming to me with a challenge. How do we work through that so that they can feel better about the thing they're coming in with? And so it took that, of course, that model of, hey, you have this challenge that you want to get better, and let's figure out how to work with that presenting concern first, so you're not feeling that. But then on top of that, how do you thrive so you can be more consistent and confident in what you do? It's not just about getting back to set point. Okay, I'm fine. Let's thrive. And I think that's really why I'm in this business. It's not about getting people back to fine, which mental health in the past has kind of been about. It's about helping people thrive and really performing at the top level they can.
Yeah, and I think intervening at a younger age is so important, because now you have your teens life's just hard in general.
Mm-hmm.
Your teens is tough, and your 20s is hard trying to figure out your career and what to do. And I guess the better you understand yourself and the more tools you have, a little bit easier it becomes to navigate.
Absolutely. And that's also a problem, because sports psychologists traditionally, there's not been money in youth athletics. Sports psychologists go to the pros,
Right.
and they go into colleges, because that's where funds are for this.
Right.
And so it really was very new for me to be. I'm sure there's people out there who have been doing it before me, but I haven't found many that work with athletes even outside of the one-on-one, and go to teams, go to schools, go to camps and programs where they can teach skills around how to manage the mind and manage performance, so that you can control confidence a little better, and you can control the consistency of your performance. And so that model I'm kind of developing, and I'm still working on it. Like, I'm still trying to figure out what's the real win-win with the clients I work with. that for my time, like and the value of my time and the value of their time, that they want an outcome, and I'm always in my head of, okay, what should it look like? What should our model look like so you're getting to the outcome where you want to be?
Right. Do you ever feel like a kid is there because the parent wants them to be, or do you feel like a lot of times the kid does have buy-in initially?
It's both.
Yeah.
It's both. And it's certainly easier when the kid has buy-in. But I think it is the strength in what I do is that I can be pretty good with relationships. Right. And when people are with me for a little bit, the kids feel understood, and they feel like I understand them and can validate their experience, and we put skills out right away that they feel are helpful. So it's like, all right, like let's give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
What are the most common things you see with a kid when they first come to you? Like, what are their like limiting factors that are preventing them from thriving? Like the initial things you want to work on?
Sure. It's usually a couple things, and it boils down to it boils down to a few. And
okay.
One would be that they're not being consistent. They're good practice players, but they don't perform in a game. Or they have a good game, and then like the next game they come out and they're not so good. So there's this inconsistency in their performance, or they just don't feel confident in their ability to perform at their max level. So that's always those two things. Consistency and confidence is always there, but underneath of that, there's reasons why they're not performing consistently. And for some, it could be easy that they don't have a good training mindset, and where they're not disciplined to a training regimen. They don't like to work hard. They don't like to be uncomfortable with
right.
all of the work it takes. And that sometimes is sometimes an easy thing in a way.
Well, and you were an athlete growing up, right? Soccer. Were you disciplined and structured?
I wasn't, and it was a thing that led me to underperforming. I still played a Division I sport. So, I rarely trained on my own when I was young, and was still talented enough to go play Division I soccer, but I should have played professional soccer. I should have been on that track. I was talented enough to do that. But at some point, once I got to college soccer, I was started to be kind of comparable to everyone else there. And that is where really my inconsistency started, and a lack of confidence started, self-esteem. Like it all kind of came in college when everyone else was just as good.
Right. Yeah, that was tough. When I think back to my athletic career, I was and still am in many ways, but I've worked on it, but a super anxious person and had this fear of failure. And I played baseball, so like maybe the worst sport to have a fear of failure.
Sure is.
Golf probably the worst one.
Yeah, golf, but baseball, right? Yeah, you go 3 for 10 and you're great. So you're failing 7 times. Yeah, it consumed me, and I just like grinded my way through high school. I played a Division III at Springfield for 2 years, and just I couldn't take any more mentally. I went to fall ball my junior year. I was just like, I can't do this and enjoy my life for another year, and ended up stopping after that. But I look back, it's like if somebody could have recognized my anxiety when I was 14, I'm like, all right, buddy, like.
Well, and so we're getting into some of those other factors, like, and some it's just that discipline to the work, which I can relate it to. In my older years, I realized it, so I know how to work through it. Atomic Habits is just a shout out on that book, a great book that really teaches how to create time blocking and how to stack habits and how to create them and maintain them. And I've gotten a lot better with the habits of my life to make sure that my processes are good, because we know if we want good outcomes in life, we have to have good processes. And so that's one. Another thing, you mentioned this anxiety. Well, why is the anxiety there? And it's usually there's fears. There's a fear of failure, or some have a fear of, like, certainly in a game where perfection is, we want perfection. There's a lot of perfectionistic people out there that want to see perfect results, where that's just not possible, barely ever. Now, there are some sports that are extremely difficult where perfection is kind of the goal. It's not not baseball. Like you're not going to be perfect. It's okay.
Right.
Gymnastics.
Gymnastics as well.
Okay, that's a good example, right?
Archery is. I have a lot of archery clients. Perfection
interesting.
is kind of needed.
That's an interesting one because you're pulling that bow back and it comes down to probably like this little millisecond where you got to have your like nervous system be so.
Yes. Like it's a really difficult sport. And so there are some sports where perfection is kind of needed, but for many it's not, and so we have to kind of draw back onto again the process and knowing you there's things you can do whether you feel confident or not, and perfection is not possible. So working on a mindset that makes that okay. There's other fears. There's fears of some have a fear of success that. Even if they do perform, like they're afraid of doing well and then having to maintain that high level. So they almost sometimes sabotage this, like their ability to perform well, because if they do, and now everyone has these expectations, they're not going to be able to maintain them. So they just kind of play it safe in a way. Fear of disappointment, fear of judgment of their friends.
Where do you feel like a lot, just for humans in general, but we can just keep speaking on, let's say, high school athletes, because that's who you work with mainly.
In college.
In college. We can say high school, college athletes. Where do these fears mainly develop from? Is it from just growing up, being around peers? Do coaches instill it? Is it just your parents and your upbringing that are instilling these things?
All of them.
Yeah.
And everything you just said. And it depends on the kid. But social media, too.
Good point.
I mean, they're constantly seeing great successes of everyone around them, or they're also seeing the great failures of everyone around them. Everything gets broadcasted constantly, so that creates a lot of pressure.
Could that be the biggest change from when we grew up playing sports to kids now, is just having that factor to deal with?
It's massive.
Massive.
Yeah.
Do you talk about that a lot with kids?
We do, yes. Although that's like kind of an uncontrollable too.
Yes, but you got to learn how to kind of manage expectations or what social media is.
Yes. And so it's a conversation of, hey, are we looking at it? Where are we putting our attention? And are those things causing an impact on your ability to be confident? And so those things come out in our conversations of, okay, you're anxious about your performance. Well, why? Let's talk about all the reasons why. And it could be parents, it could be coaches, it could be fear of disappointing their teammates or friends. Or there's this expectation that they have that everyone performs at this high level at their age, and if they want to go play at some great college or they want to go to the pro level, they've got to do these things because they see everyone else doing it.
You see everybody all over the country now.
Yeah, we didn't see that growing up. We had no idea what everyone else was doing.
No, which I'm happy that it was like that.
Can you imagine your anxiety if you did? Like you already talked about like how you were anxious just in our little town of Chatham. Like just imagine if you were able to see, somebody from California doing God knows what, and you're like, well, what do I got to do now? Like,
yeah, I couldn't imagine. I just wouldn't want that growing up. Even just with bullying as it's like on social media, I would not want to have to deal with that.
I feel like also like with social media and just like sports media, like everything is in such, I guess, extremes where if a player does really well, they're like praised for it. And then immediately they could have one bad game and everybody's basically shitting on them, for lack of a better term. And for a kid, it's like they may see that and this might be their favorite player, and then they think, okay, is this gonna, like, if I do well this game, and like you said, like fear of success almost, like if I do well this game, the next game if I don't do well, just because I had a bad game, like, am I gonna lose playing time? Are my teammates gonna think this about me? Are my parents gonna do this? Is my coach gonna feel this? Like, so it's like I feel like a lot of it isn't just social media, but it's also just the way sports media will hype somebody up, but then they have one bad game and they bring them all the way down to rock bottom. And like you see it every day on sports media.
At that age as well, like teenagers in college, like you care so much about what people think. Like the social pressure to fit in is human nature. It is. It's like that's the time when we do that. Fantastic to be. I'm now almost 40, and like it's great to not care anymore.
So great. When do you feel like you let go of that?
It's like 25, 26. There was a time in my life where I learned a few things and developed a ton of self-esteem where it didn't matter anymore to me what people thought. But it certainly did impact me a lot.
Because I don't think I'm impressed by 25. I don't think I really got there until, because I feel like when I opened this business, which I was 28, 27, I very much still care what people thought, and I cared about what other businesses were doing. I don't know, maybe not until 33, maybe that was the last year. It's like I started to finally be like, I don't give a fuck what people think, man. What were your turnarounds that helped you build that confidence and be like, yeah, man, it doesn't matter?
Well, I think it was a few things that I would put a lot on. It was my upbringing. I was kind of an anxious kid too, and kind of low self-esteem and a lack of confidence. That was my upbringing. But then I had an interesting go about it because my stepfather my stepfather and mother was who I was around, and my stepfather passed when I was 17, and then my mother passed when I was 20. So
Jeez,
I'm not
dude.
even out of my college yet. And I'm kind of on my own. I have I have an aunt and uncle who live in a different state.
No
so-
siblings?
No.
Oh,
So
jeez, Powell.
so very like different situation from most, and so I felt tons of pressure to now I need to be successful. Like in a way, I need to make enough money, which is what 20-year-olds don't think about. They have fallbacks usually.
Dude, what do you even do on like breaks from school?
Well, I went back to the house in which I grew up in. That was now mine, and was working a ton to try to figure it out. And really, it became a survival. It was a survival instinct. However, as difficult as that time was, and certainly we won't wish that on anyone, it was an incredible time looking back because there was a survival that had to happen, and I did, and there was a sense then that nothing can take me down. Like I realized that like this is the worst thing that could probably happen to me, and I'm gonna be all right. And so that was a huge piece of it. But then I was lucky to stumble across there was like a Buddhist like temple kind of that was like I was in Baltimore, and I was going out to meet some buddies at a bar actually, and we were walking by this Buddhist temple, and I was so early, and it was at meditation at 7:00, and it was like 6:50. I'm like, oh, I'll just stop in and see what that's about.
You're like, before I drink, let me do some meditation.
which I had, this was 20 some years ago, and I had no, like, meditation was just something people made fun of in movies. Like we didn't see that or hear about that then. And so I went in and I did it, and it was like a couple minutes into the meditation where they're like, okay, you got to pay attention to the breath and all those things. And while I was doing it, these thoughts of my mother just came in, and I started thinking about my mother, and it was like, it wasn't even negative memories per se. It was just thoughts of her. But I did notice that I was feeling very tense, and I started to get kind of upset while I was thinking about it, which is the way our mind works. Like what we think of, we end up feeling. So I'm sitting there starting to feel a little tense, and like I came back, I was like, oh God, like I'm supposed to be paying attention to my breath. I just went off. And then as soon as I came back to my breath, all of that tension like faded away. And I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like all of a sudden I have control over the way that I feel, which I had never felt in my past. And so that was a eureka moment that, hey, if we can just reset attention and what we pay attention to, we have control. We have control over our lives. And it was an insight that I realized right in that moment. And also right in that moment, I thought, I need to teach as many people as I can about this. And so that plus this idea of the power of thoughts I learned in the next couple of years too, really shaped some early wisdom that I had that I felt like I needed to give to people.
Right.
And then that's kind of what I've been on this path since.
So
That's
you're
powerful.
saying the path started on the way to the bar.
It sure did. Yeah.
It's not a bad path to start on. You know?
That could be a name of a book.
That could. See?
Yeah, for real. This episode of Off Exit 10 is brought to you by Bombas. Bombas makes my favorite pair of socks, hands down, alongside the most comfortable and durable underwear, t-shirts, and other everyday clothing staples. Their wide variety of sock lengths, colors, and patterns have you covered, whether you're working out, going out, or lounging at home. I love their merino wool blend athletic ankle sock for long days of coaching at CDSF and getting in workouts myself. And if I'm at home doing work around the house, you better believe I'm wearing my Bombas Sunday slippers with their comfy memory foam midsole. And when you buy from Bombas, you're also buying for those in need. For every item you purchase, Bombas donates one item to people in overnight shelters, transitional living facilities, rehab centers, Title I schools, and medical service professionals. Take my word, if you want to upgrade your sock game to one that's more comfortable, durable, fashionable, and charitable, head over to the Bombas link in this episode's description to browse their full collection of everyday wear, and don't forget to use code CDSF20 for 20% off your first order. The supplement industry is like the Wild West. The lack of regulations mean the supplements you purchase may not even contain the ingredients listed on the label, which is why I get my daily vitamins and supplements from Thorne. Thorne vitamins and supplements are made without compromise. Quality ingredients ensure your body optimally absorbs and digests your daily supplements, while in-house and third-party testing ensure you're getting exactly what you paid for. Thorne offers a variety of health tests reviewed by board-certified physicians that evaluate your lifestyle, gut health, sleep, stress hormones, and metabolic markers to determine which vitamins and supplements may be most effective in helping you feel and perform better throughout the day. For college and professional athletes, Thorne has NSF-certified supplements that make sure you won't get pop positive on a drug test. Whether you're an athlete, professional, parent, grandparent, or weekend warrior, Thorne's selection of high-quality supplements can help improve your quality of life. Switch to Thorne's high-quality and extensively tested supplements today at thorne.com/u/CDSF. That's thorne.com/u/CDSF. You know what? Okay, so when I was going through your website, I think it was your ebook that you put out, but the image of how your thoughts and your emotions, right? Am I getting it right?
That's right.
Then can affect your physiology. Explain that image, because I think that's really powerful. People just to start to wrap their head around the connection between how they're feeling, how they're thinking, and the response to their body. Because for athletics, we go back to the flow state. If you want to be not tense, in control of your body, being able to perform optimally, like, I think that's the real foundation.
It is
that image that you have.
That is the foundation.
Describe
That's
the image, people that are listening, and then go download Powell's ebook, please.
Yeah, good call. I think that is it. When I'm working with teams, we start with that image because it creates an awareness of how much the thoughts we think and the emotions we feel impact everything. And so in the ebook, there's the sense where it's like a workbook where we can say, take a situation of, hey, I've got a big game, or I have to go at bat, or if I've got to go swim or race, whatever it is. And of course we have a thought about that. And if that thought is, God, I hope I don't mess this up, or I hope I don't fail, something unpleasant, it creates kind of a negative emotion of anxiety or doubt or fear or worry. And of course, emotions are energy in motion. If we were to break that word down, it's energy in motion. And then we feel. So it's a feeling is what we feel our emotion. So we feel the energy that's moving throughout our body. So when we talk about physiology, it is the physiology of anxiety is we feel our heart racing, we feel a pit in our stomach and our chest tighten up. That's the feeling of the emotion of anxiety. And so this breakdown of the fact that from thought to emotion impacts the way we physically feel, and then our performance, our behaviors go right along with that. So if we're feeling anxiety in a batter's box, we are, for one, our muscles will tense, we'll feel tighter, our reaction speed will be slower, we might be more defensive as a hitter, trying not to like mess up or get out, just get a bat on the ball.
Yeah.
And we might stand in a different spot in the batter's box. Or the way we swing, our technique might change because now we're in our head and we're feeling tense and tight, which is not how we've taken all those practice swings. So now the movement of our swing changes. Everything about our performance just changed because of the feeling we're feeling. And that's the case in every sport, that our performance changes due to those underlying thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the more we reflect on our careers, probably, Paul, and you see kids in here, and you have some kids in the gym who you're like, oh, you're a stud in the weight room. but it just doesn't quite carry over. I think a lot of the times you go, well, maybe their skills just aren't great, but I think you got to split that down the middle. And it's like, maybe their skills aren't great, but maybe, you know, psychologically they're not in the greatest place.
Right. Sometimes you got to figure out how you can connect. Okay, why are they so confident in their performance in the gym, and how can I connect that to the field? Like,
Right.
Because clearly they're in here and they're a monster in here, and then they get on the field and something disconnects between the weight room, and it could be a skills thing.
Correct.
But it also could very well be like, okay, they're confident in here, and then they walk out on that grass or on that court or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden it's like all these feelings of anxiety, whatever it is, start coming up. And whether it's, again, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of whatever it is, those things come up. How can you get that switch to flip? Like, okay, get them to think about how they feel when they're weightlifting, and then translate that to the field.
And that becomes a great strategy. Yeah. It's like you need to shift what you're thinking or doing. And that becomes part of that model that I have in the workbook. It's, okay, we don't always have a great control over the feeling. Mm-hmm. Like, if we're feeling anxious, I'm not saying we always can think a good thought or do something to get rid of the anxiety totally. In fact, a little bit of stress and a little bit of unpleasantness is a good thing. It prepares us. In fact, flow state is not really possible unless those chemicals are kind of moving through us. But we need to make sure that thoughts we're thinking and the actions we're doing are in harmony with the performance we're trying to have, which we do. We have control of those things. And so that's a lot of my work with people, is to make sure that let's get our thoughts moving in the right direction and the actions moving in the right direction, so we take more control.
How do you deal with, you're having a session with a kid and you learn that a parent or one of their primary sport coaches is really negatively impacting their psychology and their performance? How do you address that? I'm sure that happens.
Oh, that happens
a lot. Yeah.
It does.
Because those are two people they're probably going to be around all the time.
Yes. I think there's pros and cons to whether it's a parent or coach. If it's a parent, usually they usually can have more interaction with the parent. They usually feel a little bit more of a comfort level to have difficult conversations with a parent.
So easier if it's a parent.
A bit easier, although they're around the parent a lot more. So if the parent is really a negative factor and is not really seeing their problem in it or wanting to change in it, then it becomes a real problem. But I'm encouraging them to create communication about what they want and how it's impacting them. And I think it's a little easier to start that conversation with parents than coaches, but I'd try to have them communicate with coaches too, and so it's a communication that whatever the strategy is and the impact of the strategy and what they would find helpful.
Right.
Although there is there is an element of the kid has to kind of get over it too. It's not all, hey, the adults need to change. There is an element of kids figuring out the resources to be resilient even when they're around tough people.
That's really good. I feel like that's the blend we all need to have. And sometimes Paul's better at blending it. Maybe so is, I thought Paul sits nicely in the middle. Maybe Dan, he sits more in the middle. I sometimes shift too much to the being too empathetic, too much on the kid's side. Do you know what I mean, Paul?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How does that go?
Where they may talk about troubles they're having with the sport coach. I hate this coach. Mm-hmm. They said this. They're not playing me in this position. And just at my nature, maybe not liking confrontation, or just at my nature is to, in that moment, just really empathize with the kid. Yeah, that's not right. Why are they doing that? Mm-hmm. Versus somewhere in the middle, probably being like, yeah, I get how you feel, but I got to see this from the coach's perspective as well. Maybe you are just not tolerating adversity correctly.
The thing, this just made me think of what I just saw Dan Hurley in an interview talked about. And they asked him, what's some of the things you do when you recruit kids?
Who's Dan Hurley?
He's the UConn basketball coach.
Okay. Sorry.
But one of the things he said is, don't recruit kids with annoying ass parents. And he said a lot of it comes down to them being able to handle that adversity. Like, our mom and dad always there to say, we're going to take you off this team, put you on this team. We're going to take you off this team, put you on this team. We're going to take you out of this school and put you in this school. Then we're going to go to like, how many schools have they gone to? How many travel teams have they played for? Like, that kind of stuff. Like, it's not, yes, you do need to empathize with them and understand where they're coming from, but then also help them be resilient to that. And then he also talks about, like, are you really working your hardest in practice? Like, is coach on you because you're not working as hard as you should be in practice? And if you did work harder in practice, they wouldn't be on you. So, like, there's, like, a lot of things with that where you do have to have that balance, like, understand where the kid's coming from, but then also give them the perspective of, like, okay, let's take you out of it and now put yourself in the coach's shoe. And sometimes it's good and then sometimes it's bad. Like, there's times in here I'm like, yeah, I'm on your side 100%. Like, there's no doubt about it, 100% on your side. But then there's times where I'm like, you know, let's look at it at both sides.
Sure.
And, you know, I think that helps them a lot because then they go, oh, you know, maybe I could be doing something different. And then that helps them kind of recognize a little bit too.
Spot on. I tend to take both approaches. I tend to validate and empathize always, but then, you know, look first to say, hey, can we communicate? How can we communicate things to the coach? How can we make some changes if you're trying to make some changes with other people? But if that's not working, or it really is you underneath of it, then you have to make some changes, and perhaps both of you making changes might be a good idea. You know, it's sometimes nice when it is the parents that could change, because the parents know I have this relationship with them. I can talk to the parents also to create some support there and help the kid communicate and help the parents get a sense of where they're coming from, and so that's a benefit. I would never do that with the coaches, but
yeah. I think the word that you said there is big, is communicate. Like, yeah, the kid needs to go communicate to the coach that something might be wrong. And then if the coach is like an asshole at that point, then you go, okay, maybe it is more like they need to do a little bit more on their end. You might need to do a little bit, but they might need to do a little bit more on the coaching end. And that's where, like, communication, whether it's kid to the coach, kid to the parent, and then to the coach, and that kind of, whatever it is, that dynamic, but there's got to be communication.
Mm-hmm.
Give me an example of advice you'd give to a kid where it's like, okay, at your next practice, you know, everything we've been talking about, I want you to go up to coach and say how to open it up. Because kid's probably nervous. So what advice do you give?
Yeah, they're always nervous.
Yeah.
Talking to a coach about that kind of thing. And it's usually, you know, if a kid's been getting poor feedback, I'd want them to say it's a soccer player where the coach has been getting on them about I don't know, not finishing well in the goal. So you know, pull the coach aside and say, hey, I've noticed you've been getting on me about this, and, you know, wondering if there's anything else, wondering how you think I can work on that. Like try to be on the coach's side a little bit too, saying, all right, I'm seeing it. Like, what can I do to be helpful? But if I'm like in my head right now, because it's always so personal around the approach, given the situation that they're working with.
Yes, for sure.
And so I'm trying to pull on a situation.
Yeah.
And it's.
I just think this is a hard moment for kids, but I think it's super important to open up that door, because if you don't open up the door of communication, you're going to have more resentment, more anger, and you're only going to have a harder and harder of a time.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that if you're going up to a coach and saying, hey, I've noticed I've been struggling with something that you've been saying, and I'm trying to make sense of it. I don't want it to impact me. So I've noticed I've been struggling when you're kind of yelling. I don't always know what you're saying. I don't know if I always agree with what you're saying. So I just want to, like, come to the table real quick and talk about it and, like, get a sense of what you're seeing, what I'm seeing. And when you yell the way you do, it's been, like, shutting me down a little bit. And so I'm trying to figure out a better way to handle that too. But, you know, tell me what you're seeing.
Right.
And so it creates a dialogue about it. And in one-on-one situations, you know, coaches will have that conversation. And I find that good coaches will do their part to validate and say, okay, I hear you, and I see where you're coming from. Like, some say, I don't think I'm the problem. And you need to continue to do this to be better. And okay, fine. Then we take it and we try our best to go with it. But I'm around a lot of coaches, and most coaches would say maybe not most, that's a big word. A lot of coaches would say that they are in constant work to improve themselves as well.
Which is great.
Yeah, and some of my best friends as coaches are realizing that they may not always come across great. That improves. They just want their athletes to perform well. And coaches have an automatic way, usually, in which they respond to situations. And of course, not all coaches come across a great way every time either. And so I think coaches want their athletes to perform well and realize they need to adjust their style sometimes to fit the need of their athletes. So I always hope that coaches can continue to learn of how they can come across in a way that supports their athletes.
I think that's so important.
I was gonna say did you see the post recently with like Deion Sanders in front of the team?
A few.
Where the one where he was talking about like how much like they love and care for the players on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And basically he was saying like love comes in different shapes, sizes. It's not always gonna be like pretty. Like, like we think about a relationship, there's arguments, right? But there's still love there, right? And he's basically he says our love is based on you getting to the next level. And he's not talking about like on the field or what they bring to Colorado. He's talking about the next level in life, basically, and that they truly love him, and that when he's not getting on them, he's giving up. And that's something that like I remember coaches saying, like, when I stop coaching you hard or stop getting on you, that means I don't care anymore. But I think that's also something that coaches probably don't relay enough. And him doing it in front of a team meeting and saying like, hey, like, this is how it's going to be. This doesn't mean that I'm putting you down or anything like that. And I think that's opening up the communication for the player to go to him and be like, hey, like, you're doing this, and then I'm performing this way. What can we do to make this better?
But there's a foundation of love. There's a foundation of care and compassion that's got to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And too often it's not always there.
Yeah. How big was the high school that you went to?
It was a low average. And up here, I'm from Maryland, and the classification is different, so it probably would have been like a B,
right?
Size B.
Paul and I went to size B, and I think.
Well,
how many graduating
we were a C that played a lot of Bs.
Oh, we played in
yes.
Bs. Okay. We went to Chatham. I graduated with just over 100.
Yeah,
okay.
They're
200.
D-school. Yeah, they're D school now, but like I graduated in 98. You graduated like 103 probably.
Yeah. But, okay, one thing I've learned since moving up here, opening the gym, you have some really big schools. Shen, which obviously is just tremendously huge, bigger than every other school. And Boston Spa, a little bit bigger. But you see, let's say, especially at a school like Shen, you see, because of the size, there's 18 kids on a baseball team, 11 on a basketball team, regardless of the size of your school. So because there's so many more kids, the same number of positions on a team, you see a competitive environment trickle down and get forced on kids at an earlier age. So you could have an 8-10-year-old who the parents may start to feel pressure to funnel their kid a certain way because, well, if we don't do this, they're gonna fall behind. Do you see that?
Very much. This specialization of sport and like really, parents, over pushing activities to have them doing it.
At what age psychologically do you feel like strong competition is healthy? Kids obviously be competing and playing, but the kids sensing this competition, at what age should that start?
I guess I'm giving an opinion.
Yeah, an opinion, please.
Is probably 12, 13,
right?
Like 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it starts to ramp up in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade.
And I don't like that.
But it should be fun. And it should be like the kids' kind of choice. They're into the sport. They love the sport. They want to go play. But it really is like 12, 13, 14, where things start to ramp up, and they probably should.
Well, and when we grew up, I remember a lot of sports, they didn't even keep score until you were like a certain age. Like Little League Baseball, we kept score as kids. They didn't keep score until we were.
You definitely kept score when you were like 9, 10.
When you got to the farm, like 9, 10 maybe,
Yeah.
but like 5, 6, 7, 8,
Right.
even maybe 9, depending, because you could be 9 and still be on a lower level,
Because
right?
you got travel teams now at 8, 9.
CYO basketball, they didn't keep score until it was just timed. Kids kept score. That's what it was. We kept score as kids on the side because like that made it fun. Like I was always competitive. I watched sports from like I was 5 years old, so I was always trying to win, but I still always had fun whether I won or lost, like at that age. And then as I got older and I realized winning is a lot more fun than losing,
Right.
I was like, oh, this is fun. winning games and whatnot, and losing games sucked. But at the same time, it didn't deter me. And I feel like that's part of it too, is they keep score at every age, no matter what it is. Every age. Like my nieces played soccer. They keep score basically at every age. And it's like, that's part of it, is you're focused on the outcome of the game and not just playing the game.
Yes, it is all in the outcome. I've been fortunate to work with a few clubs in the area, and there's a really, I think the biggest girls soccer club is the Albany Alley Cats, and I'm with that club, and I've done a lot of parent sessions recently, and trying to help the parents manage themselves a little better, and so that and understand what can provide the best for their daughters to be in the most optimal level they can be, so they can perform well and they can develop well. And everyone wants that, but parents sometimes the pressure, they put undue pressure, and through their own excitement or their own desire to have their kid be successful, they create so much pressure.
Which is great that you want that for your kid.
Sure.
And it could be intentional and unintentional, for sure. Like, it could be like intentionally placing this pressure on the kid, or like you're not realizing that you are, and then someone like you comes in and talks to the parents and they go, oh shit, like I'm that person and I didn't even realize it. And like, then they can pull themselves back and put themselves in a better position to help their kid.
Sure. I really look at sideline behavior of parents in all sports. Of course you want parents to be excited and root for your kids, and that should happen. But then there's like this ferociousness that comes out of parents when there's bad calls or someone makes mistakes, and like they're so heavy on outcomes that they create a lot of pressure and anxiety around things going well. And it usually, we look at, do your athletes perform better when you all are yelling out? Do they enjoy the sport more when you all are yelling out? And usually the answer is no. Like, it creates undue pressure and a kind of a tension towards it where they don't enjoy it as much.
Yeah. And like the Dan Hurley thing, he talked about, like, how often is the kid looking in the stands at their parent? Like, if I see, especially he's looking at, juniors, sophomores, seniors in high school, so they're a little bit more mature. Like, you're not talking about a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader. Like, how much are you looking into the stands at your parents for coaching? Like, why are you looking there? Why aren't you going to your coach for that? Like, where's the disconnect in this? Like, and that's where he talked about, like, the parent side of things. And he talks about, like, the behavior on the sideline, behavior after the game, behavior during the game, all those things with your teammates, your coaches, and your parents. And we've talked about that with kids in here. It's like, they're going to come see you at this game, then they're going to come try to validate other things at another game. So they're going to see your talent here, then they're going to validate your behavior, who you are as a teammate, who you are as a son or daughter, and then from there they're going to make the decision on, that's the kid I want or that's the kid I don't want.
Yes. Love that interview. Highly recommend it.
Dan Hurley. UConn coach.
Yeah.
Now I know.
He's a big deal.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Do you watch a lot of sports?
I go through phases of that. My attention is quite a commodity, and I'm a pretty busy guy. I value balance, and so I've got, I work very heavy, and then but I'm also a divorced parent, so I've got 2 kids that I have all by myself for a week at a time, and so when I have them, I'm not watching any TV, and I'm with them, and then once they go down, I've got like an hour of my night to do whatever I want, and it's not usually TV. So I have to be very selective about what I pay attention to, and
you got to stay disciplined with stuff too. I think I always make fun of this guy. You know who David Goggins is, Jay?
No.
You know Goggins?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes he's just like so intense. But I think he's like, it's either him or Jocko. Maybe Jocko is like the discipline equals freedom guy. But like, since we've had a kid and life keeps getting busier, I've realized like it is super cheesy, but it's so important. Like, if I can stay more disciplined in what I need to do with my life, like the more freedom I'm going to have to enjoy certain moments, to really be present with my kid instead of like have a million things in my head when I'm sitting there trying to play with her. Yeah, it's so important. Time management and discipline.
Yes.
Who is that Goggins or Jocko? Look it up, Paul.
Oh, I don't.
I think they
I don't
both
know. They both
agree.
Yeah.
But But yes, yeah, like, and I value exercise, and I value like going out and playing sports, and running and walking, and being with friends. So those things kind of take, if I have free time, and reading, like I guess I prefer to do that. I'm not a big TV guy, but of course, like big sporting events I enjoy watching, and like March Madness and Super Bowl, and when we get into professional soccer, like I have teams, professional football, I have teams that I like, but I can't follow them like people follow them. I just watch the big ones.
Also, soccer fans are psychotic, so
Yeah, they can be.
So like them following a team versus like your average like baseball fan following a team are two different things.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, like the European soccer leagues,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Well, in difference of they have 40 games that round out their league, where baseball fans have 160, and
right.
so
It's more like football fans are closer to what soccer fans are, but even still, it's not even close, except for maybe the Bills.
It was wild, and went to Scotland for a couple years in college to play, and we went to some games. The atmosphere is unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
That's what everybody says, man.
It'll draw you in.
The one thing I was gonna say before, you were talking about with like parents and them yelling from like the sidelines and whatnot, is I'll go to like my niece's games and I'm like silent, like I don't say a thing. I wait till the game's over. I'll go talk to her, see how she did, ask her what maybe she could have done better, what she did well, that kind of stuff. But then if I'm sitting there watching the Yankees, I am screaming at the TV, like, you suck, hit the baseball. But again, it's a completely different thing. One, they can't hear me. Two, they don't care that I'm saying this. And three, they're paid millions of dollars, so they should be able to hit the baseball.
And as a great point. But as a parent, you get so wrapped in, and perhaps as as an uncle, you're not necessarily tied so much to her success that day. Like it's like, okay, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you would hope for parents to kind of pull that into it, that you'd hope for the process to go well. And I say eat the process, which is effort, attitude, and technique and tactics. Like, is your effort high? Is your attitude good? And are you doing good techniques and in the right spots?
Can we put that somewhere in here?
Just,
I want that somewhere.
Yes, it's just doing the controllables. Like
the first two are the best.
Yes, effort and attitude. Yeah. And technique, you don't always have control of. Like it takes time. But that's what parents should be focused on. And they're not. And they get so wrapped up in the they know that if the game doesn't go well, then their son or daughter might be in a bad mood. They know that they're going to have to face that. Right. They know that they don't like to see their kids fail, so they get so worked up. Mm-hmm. Some of their own emotions to just winning or losing get tied up into it as well. So adults, parents don't have it easy on a sideline. Like they're along for the ride too. Mm-hmm. But they have to have, I guess, in their wisdom, to manage their own emotion and say and do the right things themselves that are in the best support of their kids. And, those things are not really told and said, and it doesn't always happen well.
Yeah. It's also like, as a parent, if you were playing, I think sometimes you got to think, is that how I would want to be talked to? Like,
That's a great question.
Just put yourself in the kid's shoes. Just like sometimes you tell the kid, put yourself in the coach's shoes. Like, if you put yourself if the parent puts themselves in the kid's shoes, like, if I played a bad game, let's say, am I going to want to sit there and listen to my parents tell me how bad I played?
Right.
No.
No one.
I would rather them either not talk to me at all, or be like, hey, what'd you do well? What do you think you could have done better? Like,
Great.
Kids are smarter than we think they are, and a lot of times they can figure it out without us telling them. Like, I think that's something that enough parents don't do, is like ask them the question and let them figure it out.
Yes.
How do you go about initial intake with the kid when they come in? What information are you gathering?
Yes, typically it's with the adult in the situation.
Okay.
And when they get very old, maybe junior, senior in high school or college, then sometimes the teenager or student will take care of it. But
right.
But I spend a lot of time up front really wanting to understand where they're coming from and what their challenge is that they're coming in with. And so, I'll spend 15, 20, 25 minutes just asking questions and getting it all out and saying, hey, did I hear you right? Is this the thing that you're wanting to work on? And so that's a lot of it, just wanting to make sure that they feel heard and that everything that they want to work on is put on the table. And then once I understand that and I want to know what the outcomes that they're hoping for, then I talk about my model of coaching. And it is the sense of being able to work with athletes and teach them 3 things that come out in every session, which is to help them understand, manage, and train their minds. And that's my big push. And so it's those 3 things. How can we understand the impact of our mind and its impact on performance, kind of what we said before with that model of thoughts, emotions, and actions. How can we manage the mind? So we look at all different types of skills that can be helpful. I give the parent or athlete a few of those up front, say, here's the types of things we would be doing to manage. And then I'm a big proponent of mental training and saying, just as we would train, I ask with all athletes of how often are you spending a week training your physical and tactical skills for your sport? Most athletes would say 10 to 25 hours they spend. And then I ask, well, how much is the mental piece impacting your ability to perform on game day or meet day? And they say, well, a lot. And I say, well, how much do you train the mental? And it's like, oh, no, nothing. And so it's a very clear sell that you should be training the mental too. So we understand the mind, we manage the mind, and we train the mind. And in the training, I'm looking for, in the beginning, can they commit 3 to 5 minutes doing certain things, which look like rhythmic breathing, meditation, visualization, self-talk. And I'm pretty good with those things. I have a program where I have all of those things on a SoundCloud account where they can listen to them, or, there's so many different types of breathing, meditation, visualizations out there. It doesn't have to be mine, but can we commit to a dedicated routine with that? And then it's coming back to the table every week. I have some programs where it's like, hey, you can have me as much as you want across a month or across a season of time. And if you want to come 2, 3, 4 times a week and sit with me for an hour, like, we can do that. But it is usually once a week with the clients I work with. Always, let's understand your mind. Let's manage it. Let's train it.
This episode of Off Exit 10 is brought to you by Anchor and the all-new Anchor Pro, crafted to endure the most high-performance workouts without the high cost and space requirements of a standard cable machine. Named the best portable cable machine by Men's Health Home Gym Awards, Anchor provides the full functionality of a cable machine in one small space-saving unit. Designed with user-friendliness in mind, Anchor can simply be attached to any squat rack or placed on any wall in your home gym using its intuitive sliding track mount. With up to 65 pounds of resistance, Anchor is built for high speed and controlled exercises alike, from cable presses and rows to chops and lifts. The Anchor has been a game changer for us here at CDSF, and now you can enjoy the same professional quality cable machine in your own home gym by heading over to anchortraining.com and using code CDSF10 for 10% off your order today. Get all the benefits of a cable machine without the high cost and installation fees. Enjoy the portable luxury and space-saving performance of Anchor today by going to anchortraining.com and using code CDSF10 at checkout. That's anchortraining.com, promo code CDSF10 for 10% off your order today. This episode of Off Exit 10 is brought to you by Drink Alchemy. Fatigue and brain fog affect us all, destroying everything we pursue. Whether as an athlete, artist, creator, or entrepreneur, our mind holds the key to performing optimally. By combining the most potent organic nootropics found in nature, Drink Alchemy delivers sustainable boost to creativity, memory, energy, and focus in one epic beverage. Stop pumping your body full of excessive amounts of caffeine and unknown proprietary blends from other energy drinks, and get clean energy from Drink Alchemy's natural nootropics like lion's mane, L-theanine, and caffeine from green tea. Used by Olympians, D1 athletes, MMA fighters, and entrepreneurs, Drink Alchemy has become a huge part of my daily routine, making sure I'm functioning optimally during long days of coaching athletes, running CDSF, and getting in quality workouts myself. So do yourself a favor and ditch the energy drinks loaded with caffeine, other stimulants, and who knows what else, and head over to drinkalchemy.com today. Live with your mind unbound and save 10% off your order by using code CDSF at checkout. That's drinkalchemy.com, promo code CDSF for 10% off your order today. How do you know what tool to start with a kid? Or are you kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it and seeing, okay, what are they responding better with in terms of breathing, meditation, visualization?
I think that's there's always an art and a science to everything. And so it's a problem I have with this business right now, I'll say, where some people are like, hey, give me the program. Like, tell me what, like a school might say, hey, I like what you do. Can you give me a curriculum?
That's just anybody in general. That's like in here, like, give me the magic program to fix this. You go, there isn't one.
Right there. It's hard for me to create some system for you.
Right. It's like we got to find some things that will help you, and now let's just be consistent with those some things.
Yes. And so part of what you're saying there is like there's an art to understanding what are the specific needs that you have and what would be the start that would be helpful to get there. And I do the same thing. It's a kind of understanding, is focus the problem? Is it managing anxiety the problem? What have you tried before that's been helpful to you, and what have you not? So that's where I start. And if it is a focus problem, then we work with like it's training, like breath training activities, or mindfulness and meditation is all, how can we focus our attention? We wander away, we come back, we come back, we come back. We're training our attention. So those things, it all comes out in my initial meetings with them. What would be most helpful to them of the few training things I like to do.
Right. What's the personality test that we talked about when we first met?
Love that test.
What's it called again?
The Big Five is something I use a lot. I think a lot of psychologists kind of rely on the Big Five.
I feel like I've known.
I feel like I heard about this when I took sports psychology.
And I feel like I've known. I've known other people who own companies who have like used it for employees and like training and management in the past.
Yes, with every individual athlete I work with, unless they're young, and I'd say like under 11 and under, I may not give it to them, but it is with every individual, every team I work with, that's a go-to test. You can go do a free one. It takes 5 minutes right now, and I think it's reliable enough to start a conversation about it. Truity is the name of the website. So Truity, Big Five, and it takes you 5 minutes, and what it will come out with is your 5 characteristics of your personality, and it puts it on a spectrum of 0 to 100 in these 5 characteristics. And the acronym for each character, or for all the characteristics, is called OCEAN. So OCEAN. And so it's your level of openness, your level of conscientiousness, your level of extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And so from 0 to 100, openness, you either 100, like open, very, very open, or on the 0 end of it, very much more closed.
So you're answering these questions, and now it's formulating a score based on how you respond to them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you're put on the spectrum of 0 to 100 in each of those areas. Now, all of them end up being very important to many aspects of sport. Obviously, if you're a very open person, you look for new opportunities. You're open to trying new regimens and doing new things and different ways about your sport. You need to go about it. But the conscientiousness piece is something that is extremely important. I think it was one that it was a little bit of a tough one for me because my personality is a low end of conscientiousness, meaning how organized, disciplined, structured, how much you're in your head thinking about all the details all of the time. And highly conscientious people like a lot of structure, and they like to stay disciplined to the structure they create. And so, of course, all athletes need training regimens, and they want to plan and need plans. And for the best ones, we were talking about Tiger Woods a little bit earlier, and his insane preparation as a kid. There had to be a level of detail and plan and structure put into that, and it wasn't just, hey, what do I feel like doing today? And I think people with a low end of conscientiousness will find it very difficult to hold up to the structure that's needed to be disciplined. And so that score tells us a lot, and tells me a lot about the clients I work with, of where they're at. When I'm with teams, it comes out heavily of how important their conscientious is to the discipline in their training. The extroversion piece, 0 is extremely introverted, to 100 being extroverted. That's certainly interesting on how socially connected they are and what type of sport they're in. If you have a heavy introvert that's in a sport that's very socially connected, there's an impact there. And likewise, of a very extroverted person that's in a sport that's much more solo, what that does to them. And so if I keep going on the A, I find to be an incredibly important one. It's the level of agreeableness they have. And agreeableness on the high end is saying you are empathetic, you don't like a lot of conflict, you like harmonious relationships, you're good with relationships, and you tend to be agreeable to the situations. Now, that might seem enticing and nice, and there's a good part about that. It creates good relationships. Obviously, people that are more disagreeable tend to have more conflict, and that's not always great. However, teams that are highly agreeable or teams that have players on them that are highly agreeable, they don't hold a high standard always because they don't like to hold the standard. They don't like to tell people they're doing something wrong. They don't, when it's time to give feedback to other players, they don't want to give it, and they don't always receive criticism very well either. And so that's a very important quality. Teams need the disagreeable player. And coaches don't like the disagreeable player always
Right.
because they're disagreeing.
Teams need a Draymond Green.
In some ways.
Maybe not that extreme.
Yeah, he's maybe down like the 10% quality.
Maybe Draymond Green like 5 years ago, but not Draymond Green.
We had friends that went to Michigan State when he was there, and they said like if they went to a party and he was there, like chances were he was fighting somebody.
He's always been that way.
So apparently.
And so it might lead us into the N, maybe a little bit, but the N of the ocean is neuroticism. And that is your tendency to be emotional or moody, or when you get off into an unpleasant emotion, how quickly you can kind of pull it back and reset. Oh. And so people are at the low end of that, are very low neurotic, meaning that they're much more stable, consistent with their emotions. High neurotic is that they're much more inconsistent. And it doesn't mean that people on the low end don't experience unpleasant emotions, just means a little easier for them to get out of it.
So Draymond's on the high end
of neurotic.
And the low end of the end.
Yes, he is.
He became our case study during all of this.
We'll have to get him on, see if he agrees.
I don't know.
I feel like he would, because he is. It's when you listen to him in an interview, he is like self-aware of like certain things. It's just like in that moment, like he has a hard time controlling it, and like that's where having somebody for a coach to work on that would probably help.
What's your goal over time? Do you want to see these scores change, or is somebody what they are?
I think it can change a little bit. It's not going to change a lot.
Right.
And
what do you
that's
want
the
to
thing
do
about
then?
personality.
You want to become more aware of what you are?
It creates awareness, and it creates really good talking points around what areas are supporting you as an athlete and what areas are not. And if I have a very low conscientious person, then it says, hey, like, look at this. This explains a little bit of why it's very hard. You don't like to set up plans. It's hard for you to follow the plans, but that's necessary. So we need to spend some time working on how to create structure in your life so that it will help you. So it really organizes my efforts to know what's some important things to go after that could be helpful to them right away.
Right. Yeah, that's good. You know what else I liked in your ebook? The two wolves analogy.
That's great.
It's great. Share that with Paul.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, have you heard of the two wolves, Paul?
I have not.
The two wolves is great.
I'm very interested now.
Yeah, it is a story of we'll say two wolves, and it was told from a Native American tribe that started this. Apparently, the Cherokee. And it was a grandfather telling a story to his grandson, and he said that there's these two wolves battling inside of us. And one wolf represents fear and anxiety and jealousy and insecurity and ego and inferiority and the lot. And then the other wolf represents love and compassion and hope and courage and optimism and kindness. So you see these two separate wolves. And then the grandson says to the grandparent, well, which wolf wins that battle? And the grandparent says, well, the wolf that you feed. So either could win, but the wolf that you feed ends up being the one that lives and ends up winning the battle. And really goes into this sense of it is a choice. It's a choice of how we choose to think and where we choose to put our energy.
I like that. I mean, it's true. Whatever you feed, whether it's the wolf analogy or whatever it is, like that's the thing that's gonna win out, or that's the thing that's gonna grow. And if you feed the wolf that's empathetic and compassionate and loving and caring more than the one that's Draymond Green, you're more likely to, that wolf's more likely to win. Like,
Yes.
yeah, I like that a lot.
I think that insight is so important, and how that ends up being, it's perhaps a way the universe works. It's a way there is a design to that where we put our energy, it grows. I use a garden reference often of, hey, we have a garden full of different flowers and such, but most often when I'm with athletes, we're looking to plant a new seed into that garden, and that new seed is around belief that they're capable of playing at a high level, which not all of them have. And so to put in the seed it's a new seed, but you put it in, but it needs now water and sunlight, and you need to give it consistent water and sunlight daily. Give it attention, keep giving it. It's not going to be natural for your mind to give it water and sunlight regularly. You have to feed it, and it needs consistency. And so when we give it consistency, it grows. But all the while in that garden, there are weeds we need to pull out, and we actually need to chop down the thorn bushes that are pricking you all along the way. So it's like, become aware of the thorn bush when it comes up in your mind, which is fear, chop it, and then go feed the right seed. So I love those metaphors. It is a nice insight on life.
I just like metaphors because it's visual.
Yeah, the garden, that's a great metaphor. I mean, you got to be seeing in your head when you're helping these kids build these tools and visualize things like that, like, this is going to go way past sports for you.
I wouldn't do it if it didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. That's why what you do is so important. And people, just over time need to learn it. And it has to be like part of because youth sports is such a big industry now. They pay for travel teams and training. And you would think it's going to trickle down, just like as with strength and conditioning did. Pro teams have sports psychologists. Big college teams do. That over time it's going to trickle.
I hope so.
I know.
I mean, where it trickles to and like the programming of it will be interesting to find out. I spent so many years in school, and I think there's a great opportunity for schools to do more work in that. And it's amazing how many hours we spend across we'll say a high school of learning higher level maths, sciences, social studies, English things like we spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours using or learning concepts that we probably won't apply. And I want to be kind to educators because, yes, there are a lot of benefits to learning those things, and some, yes, directly apply. But we do learn a lot of things that we will not directly apply in school.
1,000%.
And we don't get anything about the actual skills that we will need in life. Or it's definitely a side thought, or, hey, let's give a day to this, a wellness day, so we can just like click this in the box and say we do something.
I think, do people talk about it more now, just the application isn't there, or neither?
I think both. They do. It's brought up that we need to do something about it, but I think there's not a lot of like well-tested and validated programs out there, and there's not a place, there's not time. There needs to be time.
In a school day, you're saying. Yeah, because how important would I went to, after my undergrad, I went to massage therapy school. I was debating whether I go to PT school or just work, but I want to be able to do more, be more hands-on, have another way to generate revenue. It kind of like boost my stock as a trainer. So I went to massage school, and the best class I took was a self-care class. They talked about like being aware of your emotions, building relationships with people, being able to have tools to like center yourself more. It was the most powerful class I took the whole time there. And it's like, dude, yeah, if you just had a basic class like that for high schoolers.
How do we not have that?
Well, I mean, we know the education system, how it was designed originally. So,
yes.
Rockefellers assigned it to create more employees. And they didn't want their employees to think. So that's where I think it's just the system started out in a bad spot, I guess you would say. And now we're still just trying to dig ourselves out of it. And some schools probably are doing a good job at it. Some schools are still lacking behind, whether it's because of resources or lack of effort or whatever it is. But yeah, the system itself was started in a bad position because we're just generating more work employees as opposed to like, okay, let's generate better people.
Yeah.
Instead.
That would be the difference.
That would
love that.
Make the difference. We're not just trying to create employees. We want to create better people.
Yeah, that's true. Even just society as a whole, like the amount of distractions, just kids aside, we all got to deal with the news, social media, lack of because have you always just worked with kids? Or you did like Gen Pop stuff as well, like adults?
No, it's been teenagers and below, college and below, all along.
And below. How much do you look at when somebody, let's take athletes out of the equation, like prior when you're working with different populations, did you look at the amount of exercise somebody was getting and how that impacts just how they feel about themselves?
Yes.
Feel day to day.
I think that if I have someone coming in saying they haven't felt good, anxiety, depression type symptoms, you mentioned something earlier, Paul, around the sleep, and now you're mentioning exercise. I have an acronym which I think is really good, and I've tried to pull from what brain scientists, psychologists have all kind of collectively
I need to
said.
write down all these damn acronyms.
Yeah, there's another acronym. And this one's kind of a funny word. I've called it SNRM. So SNRM, SNERM. Those 5 things tend to be at the top of the list. If we get those right, then we tend to be pretty good. And it's sleep, nutrition, exercise, relationships, and some sort of mental training. So yeah, and so sleep, they're just critical. And high school and college are not getting enough of it. And the nutritional piece is not good either. I wonder how much you all see with that and how much that impacts their ability to perform in the weight room. But then exercise and creating good relationships, and then any mental training. It doesn't have to be meditation. It doesn't have to be breathing or visualization, but journaling, anything, yoga, for some that are more spiritually inclined, some sort of prayer, anything that really draws your attention intentionally to positive things or the present moment, then you're training your mind to be present.
Right. And I know you're not a psychiatrist, but how much would you want people to make sure all of those that SNRM is addressed before you jump to like going on an SSRI or some type of medication?
Always.
Yeah. I feel like that's the trouble with our society today too, is like we're just quick to prescribe these things where like you're not addressing any of those: sleep, nutrition, exercise, relationships. It's like,
yes,
maybe move the needle on those a little bit.
That's always got to be first. Yep. I'm trying to like look at for scenarios where it wouldn't, but it's rarely like get talking with someone to kind of modify your thought process, because everything: sleep, nutrition, exercise, relationships, mental training, those are all actions. But they're also the mindset pieces in there too. So we got to change thoughts and actions if we want to change how we feel. So, a therapist is great for that, or someone that you can talk to is great for that. But if those 5 things are not really, if one of those are failing you, then you need to get that right before looking at a medication. But certainly some people perhaps have traumas.
Right.
I think traumas are things that do impact without a lot of necessarily control. Like if you are doing all the right things, trauma can rear its head, and it does. And so, but the field of mental health is coming around to realize there are some really good, quick practices or therapeutic interventions that can be done that can be helpful. Finding EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization, is a practice that is found to be very effective for trauma. RRT, rapid resolution therapy, another quick hitting practices, interventions that can be helpful. I find the psychedelic community is really, really, and the research going in there, certainly around psilocybin, ketamine, and LSD kind of coming on the back end of that, finding, and even ecstasy as well, like finding that when those things are done in a good fashion and done therapeutically, not recreationally, the set and setting have to be spot on, but when they are, can be incredibly impactful. Yeah,
we talked, I think this was before we came on, but we had Dustin on, who's big in that community, but we talked about the Michael Pollan book and the documentary, and how powerful some of this stuff can be. But right, set and setting, you mean by we're not just going to go take it at my buddy's house.
I'm not just going to a rave to take some ecstasy and
yeah. I mean, of course, people apparently people can have some good times with that. However, it's very recreational, done for the intention of enjoyment, and there's some things that can go very wrong when it's done with that level of freedom. But set and setting is getting the mindset right, like making sure we have intention, that our thoughts are positive about the situation we're moving into, and we have planned it to be that way. And the setting is making sure you're in a spot where it feels safe and comfortable, and you are not around a lot of people that you don't know and trust. Those are set and setting.
Because the research is behind what? Dealing with trauma, with PTSD?
Yes. And substance use is a big one. Anxiety is kind of coming about. Depression is definitely in there too. So those core things, and old age, like fear of dying and moving on, and found that psychedelics and when done therapeutically can be incredibly impactful, and even microdosing them incredibly impactful. And when done well, very little, like to no consequences to them when done therapeutically.
Right. Jay, what didn't you like about it?
About what?
Psilocybin? Microdosing?
What didn't I like?
Yeah.
Do you have a memory of me saying I didn't
remember
like
you said you
something?
did it for a bit, and then you were like, not for me.
No, that wasn't my experience.
No.
Nope, I did it for a bit. I wanted to save some money, so I stopped buying it for a little bit. No, the experience was great. Yeah.
You felt what? Just more...
I felt a little more alert. I felt more accepting. And, I don't have the education on the mushrooms or the psychology to really know, but my therapist tells me the understanding is that it can just dig out new neural pathways rather than be like a serotonin, receptor or blocker, whatever that may be.
Right.
So yeah, I found it beneficial in my day-to-day. I really liked it.
Yeah. The neurology of it is really interesting, where it does reset.
Have you researched some of that?
I have, yeah.
Explain some of the physiology and neurology, because I think that's really cool, Jay. If we're not just blocking these pathways, but we're allowing you to activate different neuropathways or change. Explain.
It resets it and rewires it, and I may not be able to pull out all of the exact chemicals, because they're like DMT5, I think, is one, but I may not be able to give the exact chemicals or things that change. But I've heard the analogy of hey, there's if we're say snowboarding or skiing or sledding, and we go down the same path, it ends up being carved. There's a path that's carved.
Yeah, your myelin around these neurons, they get thicker, they get stronger.
Thicker. Absolutely. And so when you start going the same path, then you're automatically start going down those paths, and it becomes very hard to get off that really carved out path. However, when you take these substances in the way that you do, it like a fresh powder of snow comes in, and then you can choose then a path without being so set in one. And I love that analogy and have found it to be very accurate.
Yeah, that's a great visual.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Once again, a metaphor.
Yes, I'm all about it. Anything visual helps me.
So there's that neurological piece to it, but when you're in one of these settings, there's the sense that your subconscious is just kind of unlocked, where we have this filter around the thoughts that we have and what comes to us on a daily basis, and naturally we good for good reason. But when we're say experiencing one of these trips, there's this unlocking of a subconscious, where there's the thoughts we think and perhaps the visuals we have. It brings up things that are not always pleasant. In fact, they can be unpleasant. However, you have this awareness that you can step outside and just observe them, and you can let them be. And as you watch and observe the passing of these things in your mind, you find some really incredible insights about things about yourself that you usually just don't think of or want to think of. You see them, and there's some healing process that happens in that. And there's some spiritual significance to it as well that they have found. It's very, very interesting what it's capable of.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. You've experienced this yourself or done some of this?
I have. So it took a lot of time to educate myself on it. I was very fearful of we'll say a bad trip, and so I wanted to do it right.
And I think society's maybe getting better, but its viewpoint on psychedelics has been negative for so long in our country.
It certainly was when I was a kid. Like the idea of someone doing it, I would have been like, oh, like that would be such a bad thing.
Right.
And I was brought up that way to think that, and of course it could go wrong when it's not done in the right setting. But because the mental health community embraced it so much, and the research was there, and the impact it opened me up, because I'm in that community, to really try to educate and understand what its impact is and how to go about doing it in a way that is safe. So I was with a therapist that was able to do this work, and we made sure that everything was good, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. It's it's just the light on mental health and giving people different avenues to, I mean, psychedelics is one, obviously, but talk therapy, visualization, breathing, everything you talked about. It's like helping people create those new pathways, those different options for them to think.
Yes. Yeah, it's creating awareness and ability to control the experience we have, rather than us being on autopilot and just letting it happen. When we take control and we think the right things, then we find we have a lot of great control over our lives. And that's a powerful thing to realize. I think that was a huge shift I had in my 20s, where I'm like, oh, wow, I have control of my life. And where it goes, what I want to do or what I want to be, I have control of that now. Completely opened me up.
Yeah, it's so easy to just be on autopilot and just be reactionary. And I feel like things are set up to do that. It takes effort to step off of that.
Yeah, very much. Very much.
Well, and I think with a lot of these things, like, it's also one of those things, like, you have to be willing to be honest with yourself. Like, if you're, last week or earlier this week, maybe Jordan was in the office doing work, and I saw him journaling, and I've told him, I was like, I tried journaling. It's hard because you have to be completely honest with yourself. Otherwise, it's never going to work. Like, and if you're not willing to do that because you want to act like you have this life or whatever that you think you have that you don't really have, or whatever it is, like, it's not going to work. So, like, whether it's journaling or breath work or whatever it is, like, it's just about being honest with yourself in that situation and using that to your advantage.
Love that. Journaling is a really impactful tool, but it is difficult to be consistent with it, and to find value in it. But to be able to get the thoughts in your head out of your head onto paper can be very therapeutic and very helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Jordan, have you found so?
Yeah. So I started.
How many books did you say you have filled?
I probably got like 17, 18 composition books.
Yeah, Jay.
Yeah, so I started therapy 5-6 years ago, and it was just kind of the first like easy tool my therapist pointed me toward, and I latched onto it, and I've been doing it probably near daily since.
And what do you find to be the benefit of it?
More than anything else, I think if I try to explore my thoughts in my head in the same way that meditation can be difficult to stick with, I have a hard time actually kind of working through whatever I may want to work through. Whereas if I'm writing the problem out, there's like this mind-body connection between, my hand and the pen and my brain, that allows me to stay focused. And I also, like Paul said, I was talking to him about how important it is to be honest when I journal. And I find it's just like, no one will ever read these. I can be perfectly safe saying whatever, even if it's like morally, socially fucked up, I can write and explore whatever I need to in here to get to a place where I can come back and, be a good functioning member of society and good to myself.
So good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah.
Jeez, spin the camera around, clip that for Jay.
Did you know that about your brother?
I knew that he journaled, but I didn't know the depth or the detail as to why it's important to him or why he does it. I know it's big for him and my sister. They both talk about it. But, yeah.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's great. Yeah, pal, I appreciate you doing this, man. This was great.
I feel like we're going to have to do a part 2.
Oh, we'll surely do a part 2.
I want to thank you guys for, I've had some clients come through here, probably a couple more than you actually know about. And they just speak so highly about you all and the process of which you all as trainers go about your work. They feel so comfortable with you all that you all care and you ask good questions, and it keeps them coming back. So the value of the relationships that you all are having with the clients that come in here, it's incredible. So thank you all.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and same to you. I think having a non-biased third party in a kid's life in terms of removed from their family, removed from their sports teams, is just so important. It's another ear to listen and give advice and help them.
Yes.
So yeah, man, we'll keep talking. We'll keep building. What you do is just so important. It's the most important. And yeah, man, we'll keep trying to get people to you. It's the most impactful thing for kids for all the reasons we talked about today. Anything you want to plug before we jump off of here?
Well, you can find my website at positivelyelite.com. I have some blogs on there that give you some insight into what I care about and the type of work I do with people, and I try to give so much content out. Like on that website, you'll find a workbook that pops up that you can just put in an email for. So, there's a lot of things I try to give away, but if anyone wants to talk more, they can certainly email me through that. I'd be happy to consult with anyone about any questions they may have. If they want to work with me, they can find me there too. I work with individuals. I work with teams. I do speaking things for like one-time things for school, which they always tend to go over well. So those are the things. Certainly on all the social media platforms too, if anyone wants to follow. But thanks for having me on.
No, this was great. And Jordan, when you're journaling, you can say whatever the hell you want.
Whatever the hell you... Yeah, I don't... Good reference, Mike.
All right, man, Powell, I appreciate you. And we'll catch everybody next time. Thank you.